So here will be the last example, and again we'll have a tax of $1 per unit again. And so again, $2 would be somewhere up there. So for them to keep selling Q1, the sellers would have to get $3 from us as a price. And so the new supply would go through that point right there. Again, here, if they try to shift the entire tax to us, which they sure will try, it's not going to work at all because, again, there's going to be no consumption at all at $3. So that's going to not work. And this is the supply of the tax. And so it looks like the price would be a little bit below $2.50. So $2.50 looks like it's about there, so it looks like it might be $2.40. Which means that the sellers are keeping $1.40 after they give the dollar to the government per unit. And so the tax incidence, again, is that the consumers will pay 40 cents of the tax, and the sellers will pay the other amount, which is 60 cents. Why? Because $2 down to $1.40 would be the 60 cents that the sellers give to the government. They used to get $2 and keep $2. Now they get $2.40, and after they give $1 to the government, they're back to $1.40. So their burden is 60 cents going this way, and then the consumers have a burden of 40 cents going that way. So it looks like the demand is probably a little bit more elastic than supply, and that's why more of the burden is placed on the sellers. Now, what's the efficiency effect here? Well, before the tax, we had our surpluses, and this was the entire surpluses right here. Difference between the demand and the original supply. The bottom part from $2 down to the supply was the producer surplus. That's what they get from us before the tax, and that's the cost of making it. And so this in here was their surplus. The top part was a consumer surplus, $3. Below demand, down to $2. Now, what the tax does is that, first of all, it creates a deadweight loss. Now the output is down to Q2, and that is where the loss comes from. We are no longer producing some output that had a positive surplus, that had higher benefits shown by demand than the cost shown by supply. And so now we lose some of our surplus. We lose this part here. This part used to go to the producers, but since they're selling Q2 amount, they no longer get this surplus anymore. We used to get this part here as consumers. And so that is our part of the deadweight loss. So those two areas right there is your deadweight loss. No longer producing Q1, we're producing Q2. That's what consumers are buying, and therefore this was part of the social surplus, is no longer there anymore. And so now what do the consumers have? The consumers have this part up here. That's our demand. That's the price we're paying. Your surplus is the difference between what we're willing to pay at most, shown by demand, and the price we do pay, the $2.50. The sellers is their surplus. Because they get, they keep $1.40 after they hand over to the dollar tax to the government. This is their cost of making the items from 0 to Q2. So that's what they get as essentially their receiving price. over their cost, and that's their surplus. In this part in the middle, let's see, I'll use green, I guess. This part of the middle now goes to the government. This part up here, the 40 cents between 2 and 2.40, used to be the consumer surplus, but now this is gone because that's what money we pay to the government as consumers. And then the bottom part used to go to the sellers, but now they only get 140. They have to pay 60 cents, right? So this is what they hand over to the government. And so the tax is both a transfer of surplus and a loss of efficiency. So a tax does both of those things. It has a transfer of surplus, and the transfer of surplus is this area here, the green area. The top portion is transfer from the consumers to the government, and that's our 40 cents per unit times, so what you do is take 40 cents times Q2, and that'll be that rectangle. And you take 60 cents times Q2 again, and that'll be what the sellers are given to the government. We hold on to this surplus up there for the consumers, and that's a surplus that the sellers get, and this right here goes to no one. That's lost because the output has decreased. And so we have a deadweight loss because now we are no longer producing output from Q2 to Q1 that had a higher utility than the cost of making it. This output was efficient because the utility up here shown by demand is greater than the cost of producing this output shown by supply. And the supply here is really just artificial. That's really just simply the supply with the tax. That simply is a way to figure out who's going to pay the tax burden, as well as where the new output is going to be. But the real cost of production is shown by here. That's the real cost. And that's why after we give the money to the government, we come back down to the original supply. Okay. So I'll just review one more time. All this color area in there, all the colors, that was the original social surplus, total surplus. The top part above $2 below demand was the consumer surplus. The bottom part below $2 above supply was the seller's producer surplus. And then what the tax does, it brings in a third player, government. And the government takes the middle part there, and that's the tax wedge. How much is above $2 and below $2 is based on the relative elasticities. And we determined that the upper portion would be a little bit smaller than the lower portion based on the tax burden, the relative tax burdens. And that these areas here, the brown and the red, that's essentially was part of the social surplus, total surplus that was cut off. So you can think about just taking a knife, chopping it right there, and these two pieces fall off, and that is the deadweight loss. And that is chapter 5.